Perhaps the most dramatic example of divine violence in the Old Testament is the slaughter of 185,000 Assyrians by an angel from God. 185,000 killed. We should ask why and how. Why would God do that? And how could a God of love kill 185,000 people? Wouldn't that make God a heartless, out of control being? That night, the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. Let me offer three reasons people got killed in the context of war in the Old Testament, and specifically in this context. I borrowed these ideas and the idea for the video from Old Testament scholar David T. Lamb's book, God Behaving Badly as God of the Old Testament, Angry, Sexist, and Racist. So reason number one, the men killed were people trying to capture Jerusalem. As I mentioned, it was only about 20 years earlier, 722 BC, that Assyria had destroyed the capital city, Samaria. At this point in our biblical account, 701 BC, Assyria had their king and the Syrian army marching to destroy Judah and its capital city, Jerusalem. In some accounts, by the time the Assyrian army got to Jerusalem, they had already destroyed 40 cities. So God is fighting defensively to save Jerusalem. Reason number two, Assyria was a brutally violent nation. The Syrians would brag about burning, mutilating, and hanging their captives, including boys and girls. In our account, the ambassador of the king of Assyria said in the presence of all of Jerusalem this in 1 Kings 18:27. Do you think my master sent this message only to you and your master? He wants all the people to hear it. For when we put this city under siege, they will suffer along with you. They will be so hungry and thirsty that they will eat their own dung and drink their own urine. So we have a deadly prophecy from this aggressive nation who is trying to expand their territory. The city of Nineveh was a capital of Assyria, and the book of Jonah describes how their wickedness warranted divine judgment. Reason three, the Assyrians mocked Yahweh, declaring that he couldn't deliver Israel from the power of Sennacherib, their emperor. The Syrian leader could hurl insults toward Yahweh, saying things like, "We will destroy you and your God just like we have done every other time to every other nation." He was saying, do you not know our track record? If you're relying on your God, well, so did the other nations. And well, they're all destroyed. They're all dead. And then God sends an angel, and the angel killed 185,000 Assyrians. God delivered the people of Judah, and his violence was justified in this context of war against a brutal empire. God was willing to use violence in specific instances to protect others. Additionally, when we take off our modern glasses and put on our ancient Near Eastern glasses, we have a better understanding of acts of violence and the Bible in general. So, what do we do with this? How do we apply this act? How do we wrestle with this passage? Both God and his son Jesus preferred peace. Remember the story of the Syrian army coming to attack Elisha and his servant? The nation of Israel and Syria at this time had been at war for hundreds of years. The Syrian king moved in and moved his troops to surround Elisha to capture him in his own city. In the morning, Elisha's servant saw a great army surrounding them, and he said to Elisha, "What shall we do?" Elisha said to his servant, "Do not be afraid, for there's more who are for us than who are against us." Then Elisha prayed to God, and the entire Syrian army lost their sight. God had blinded them. Elisha then went to the troops who had intended to kill him, and he said, "I'll take you to the man you're looking for. Elisha led them to the capital city, Samaria. When the king saw the army, his enemies, he said to Elisha, "Can we kill them?" Elisha said, "No." When the army's eyes were opened, they had no idea what to expect, but Elisha had peace and reconciliation on his mind, and he had a feast planned for them. So two opposing armies ate together. Note that once again, Elisha's life was in danger. And throughout this ordeal, Elisha prayed and God guided. Jesus said, "Love your neighbors and pray for those who persecute you." In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus may have had this story in mind. In fact, the strategy Elisha used seemed to come straight out of Proverbs. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. Let's bring peace. Let's promote reconciliation. Yahweh and Jesus' desire was to always bring peace and reconciliation to a situation of crisis and fear. But there are at times also they brought judgment. But here's something for you and I to process. We should acknowledge that both Yahweh and Jesus prefer peace to violence. Yahweh used violence only to punish the wicked or to protect the weak. And he ultimately promoted peace. May you and I be peacemakers and approach Scripture with a humble, informed heart. For more on topics like this and to follow our family's journey, be sure to like and follow and subscribe.